My name is Matthew Denner. I am the procurement specialist here at Procurement Australia, and I'll be responsible for this morning's pre-tender industry briefing for Courier Services contract, which is a tender that's upcoming in the near future. In terms of why we are here, there's the usual slide. You can see that we have a current Courier Services contract. In fact, this is what I tend to call a hardy perennial. We've been running it, I believe, for at least 10 years or so now. And the current contract is reaching its natural expiry point, and so we are now looking at the retender process to have something in place to dovetail. So you can see that the expiration anniversary date is the end of the year. So in the usual format, what we have here are a three-pointer approach. So a quick overview of the summary, and us, a conversation about the tender and some feedback opportunities. As discussed, again, the specification, we'll have a quick look at that in a couple of slides. It'll also, as the slides will talk to this, be available to you afterwards if you just want to drop me a quick line. And I'll be very keen to have any thoughts or feedback that you have in relation to it by the 29th of June. So in terms of the agenda, I've covered off a couple of the main points, but in essence, this is what we're looking at. Overview of us, for those of you who don't know us, overview of the contract process here, scope, structure, and the usual sorts of things. I know that a couple of people have joined us now. Good morning. If I can ask you, please, if you can put yourselves on mute. In terms of Q&A, happy to take questions at the end. This is, although we'll go through at quite a speed, I think, because it's relatively straightforward. If you do have questions, please hold them to the end. We may well cover them off as we go. Anything that we can't address at the end of the briefing, I'll take offline. I'll get some answers for you, and I'll circulate it to all of the attendees, so you will get your questions answered. So in terms of us, well, the first thing to say is that we've been around for a little while. We've been around since 1985. We're owned by the City of Melbourne and some other councils down here. And as a result, we're a for-profit business. So despite the name, perhaps, we are a for-profit business. The other main point to bring to your attention is actually dear towards the bottom. Whilst we came out of the local government space, and the core of our membership and user group has traditionally been in the local government space, so councils, water authorities and so on, since 2017, we acquired the member book for Church Resources, which was the procurement arm of the Catholic Church in Australia. And what that meant is that we acquired, as you can see, quite a number of members in the not-for-profit space that gave us a genuine national footprint in that area. So we've got our core user group, who are, as I say, principally local government. Then we've got a very large not-for-profit membership, and then we also peripherally have members in the healthcare, higher education, schools, and general business space as well. In terms of our services, well, the key one, obviously, there is the publicly tendered standing offer contract, which is what we're here to discuss today. But you can see that also more broadly, within the procurement space, we offer a number of other services to our members. This is a key point for us, and it's one of our key selling points, and it's a qualitative point. Our procurement process is quality assured and has been, I understand, for the best part of 20 years, if not 20 years, in fact. So we have a proven track record of knowing what we're doing. We've been in business since 1985, and we have the, if you like, the proof behind it to support it. So it's one of the benefits that we provide to our members, that they are, if they choose to engage with a supplier under our panel, that they know that that supplier is being picked via a quality assured process. The broad benefits there to the members, it's the usual celebrity squares approach. First and foremost, particularly in the local government space, if they engage with us, or rather they engage with you as an awarded supplier under one of our contracts, for the vast majority of our local government members, that means that they don't need to run an RFT, a request for tender process. So they can make that their approach to be more of a quote or a request for quote process, which is invariably a much more straightforward and a much simpler process. Councils, as I say, may have their own internal guidelines for how they engage, but nevertheless, in the broad sense, that is a time cost, however you'd like to measure it. It's a practical saving for them. In terms of the broad product offering, what we're talking about there is that as well as the courier services contract, we also have perhaps 30 to 35 other contracts, ranging from electricity, so energy, right to library services, to office products, to debt collection services, to IT, and so on and so forth. All of which means that we can offer a supermarket opportunity to members. They can come in for one thing, they can see something else. There's a cross-selling opportunity for everybody, but it's also an opportunity for the members to engage as they wish. And all of these products have run through our quality assured process, so they are all of the same high standard. Looking down to the bottom left, as I say, these are standing offer contracts that we're offering, and that means they can opt in during the contract. So we may, and you'll see slides talking about this later on, we may have members who may pre-commit to a contract. Not every contract, but pre-commit to a contract at the outset to say, yes, if this contract is actually awarded after the tendering process, then our sourcing strategy will be via the contract. But for many and most of our members, they will engage afterwards. And you will see a usage uptake over life of contract. And obviously, as I say, the last one is the compliant process governed by ourselves. Looking to the other set of squares, which is the benefits to the suppliers, you can see there's a certain mirroring there because it's basically the advantages run both ways. From your perspective, if you've been engaged in responding to a request for tenders as opposed to a request for quotes, you'll know that a lot more work goes into an RFT than into an RFQ, and therefore you can see automatically a time and space saving for yourself. Again, the access to Procurement Australia's members, that comes through both in terms of general access, but also we have an established developing and developed for other marketing team. So there are other channels for you to engage the member base with. We also have our own discrete sales team. There are about 10 or 12 individuals. They're based around the country in the key population centres. And their focus and goal is obviously to grow the member base, and also to ensure that as the members have a procurement need, that as far as is possible, they will engage via the panel or the relevant panel. I should say they are supplier agnostic, supplier neutral, and that's our general position here. But nevertheless, you have a group of people whose job it is to promote the contract, and therefore, by definition, by yourselves as well. In terms of the overview of the contract now, we're looking there, you can see it's the delightfully and obviously named Courier Services. It's got its own number because these things do. We've got the standard term, which is the principal period of 2 years with the 1-year option to extend, and the start and the expiry date there. So just sort of standard nuts and bolts details. And as mentioned before, we put quite a lot of detail into the slides. Please don't be afraid of it. If you're aware of the general shape, I apologise. We build them for everybody. The key thing here is obviously you can listen to me, lucky people, but you can also take this away as a sort of a detailed deck that with a 5-minute chat you can hand to somebody else in the business who didn't hear the briefing and didn't see anything else. And with your chat and this slide deck, it should give them a good overview of what it is that we are offering. In terms of the draft specification, as mentioned at the outset, this is under review, but if you care to drop me a quick line by email, I'll be more than happy to let you have a copy of it. Again, please do take a look. Please do feel free to come back with any comments. Obviously, by the 29th, as mentioned, as well as this sort of commercial opportunity to present this, this is also sort of a final touch point to engage with the industry to say, this is what we have in mind. Please come back to us and let us know if this fits with what you've seen elsewhere and how the industry talks to itself and how its clients talk to the industry. That way, the idea ultimately, as you may have heard before, is to ensure that there are no surprises come time of tender. Everybody sees a tender document that they expect to see in the format, structure and shape that they would expect to see. In terms of the objectives, again, they're relatively straightforward. So you're looking for a compliant tender under the relevant local government acts, putting on a panel, of course, of experienced and capable suppliers, and particularly for this contract, one that will allow the members to engage for RFQ activity, because that seems to be the general process for this sort of work in the courier space for our contract. In terms of the scope, now moving on, again, still to be finalised, but we've got a very high-level, straightforward approach here of two categories, ad hoc and set run. Quick piece of flavour text here. In essence, we're looking for quality people who can provide and demonstrate with capability that they're able to offer services in this space. And you can see that the general view there will be submit the detailed quotes at time of need. Set run, largely the same again, but a similar sort of approach. In terms of capabilities, again, we're looking, capability saw for both categories. Just a standard list of the sort of things you'd expect to see, really, from somebody in your space. Including but not limited, the usual same-day services there. We put in a number of sort of high-level, just general descriptors there, which run on to the next page for capital C. Basically what we have there, again, that's just been checked against the industry for general standards. Moving on, again, the taxi track, non-capital city metro areas. Next day, obviously the interstate and the warehousing. Now, again, as probably as discussed, this traditionally, in terms of use and demand from members, and I should say that our contracts are driven by a member demand. We try to understand if there is one, establish and qualify it, and then present them with a product. The traditional work has been in the same-day services, largely within the metro areas. Nevertheless, as I say, whilst these are more peripheral, we put them on, we ask for the capability so that we can offer those should those be required to the members. Moving on, again, just a number of the usual sorts of things you expect to see at the very high level. What's the capability in the distribution, goods tracking, and so on and so forth. Again, the intention here is to provide a broad marketplace which is properly qualified, which allows the members to engage when they have a specific need with yourselves. Moving on, I just wanted to drop this one in here. In terms of the insurance requirements under the contract, again, the feedback that we've had from industry about what they're asked for and what the members or your clients look for would largely be these three elements here. 20 million under the public liability now seems to be a relatively standard approach for the work cover as well as you would expect. And the central point there, number two, obviously, is the third-party insurance for the vehicles. Now, we can appreciate that that might be quite a large undertaking, a very large undertaking. Therefore, generally, the approach that we've taken there is to ask for a statement of compliance. And that seems to be something that the industry is familiar with and is able to provide and is, for a given value word, comfortable to provide. If there are any comments that you have, then please do let me know. Again, these are the sorts of nuts and bolts things that it's good to get the feedback from. Moving on now more to just general process. For those of you who are very familiar with the tendering process, I ask you again to bear with me for those of you, because again, we write this for people who are all walks of life and all levels of experience. So the key elements there is you can tender for either or both of the categories. The evaluation will be by category and award, and the suppliers will be awarded by state and or nationality. On the right here, I've provided a list of, again, indicative criteria for how we go about evaluating. I do emphasize the word indicative, but it gives you a flavour for sort of how we approach the whole process. For those of you, again, as I say, who are familiar, this is a relatively straightforward approach. In terms of the tender structure, you'll be ecstatic to know that should you choose to download the tender documents, you'll be presented with a document that has 6 parts in it anyway, A through F. As you can see on the slide there, the titles speak, generally speaking, to what they're about. I'd like you to pay particular attention to Part C, Deed of Standing Offer, and Part D, the sub-agreement at this point. Because we're now, again, going to move to the next slide, which talks about returnable schedules, which is basically within Part F for Freddie. You'll be even more happy to know that there are at least 16, at least at the moment. You will, however, be relieved to know that at least 2 of them simply require somebody to put a signature in a box, hopefully somebody who's authorised to do so. I'd like to reference particularly their Schedule 14, Proposed Contract Departures, and I'd like to hopefully you've still got in your mind Part C and Part D. For some of you, in terms of a tendering process, the internal process may be that the tender is run, and then after an award has been made or a provisional award has been made, then documents are referred to the legal team for review. That is not the way we do things here. We present you with a suite of tender documents, A through F, at time of tender, which if you choose to download, you will see. Part C is the deed. It's the agreement between, head agreement, if you like, in the vernacular, between yourselves and potentially yourself. And Part D are general conditions. If you are considering tendering, please refer those documents, possibly the document suite as well as the document suite, but particularly C and D, please refer them to your legal team at that point. Because if you then choose to submit your tender, in Returnable Schedule 14, you will be asked to say, yes, I'm ecstatically happy with the whole document suite. That's great, thank you. Or actually, no, I have a few concerns, and these are as follows. If you say that you are happy in Schedule 14 and you proceed, and if it comes to it that you are awarded, and it then goes forward for the deed to be signed, there is no opportunity for it to go to your legal team and say, now we have some questions. That's not how it works. So please do be aware of how our process works. It's very important. With the best of intentions, this is something that trips somebody up pretty much every tender. Okay, so please be aware of how our process works. In terms of the broader process, congratulations, the tender manager is myself. There's really no excuse for it. I apologise, but you just have to work with what you've got. So my role is right there. In terms of just overall responsibilities for who does what, where and when, this is just a general crib guide for how these things would work. Again, for those of you who are broadly familiar with these processes, again, it's a slide that you've probably not much of interest or need, but perhaps if you're passing it on as a broad deck to somebody who's not familiar with the procurement process or logistics in that sense, it may be of use. The indicative timetable, well, here we are, we've got the briefing and we've got it today as a webinar. We're looking at a tender release date of not later than, I believe it's a Wednesday, so Wednesday in late August. So we'll look to let for about 3 weeks. And then after the let has closed, then we will be looking at an award toward the end of October. And the contract agreement, of course, begins on the 1st of January next year, 2023. In terms of download and clarification, again, we use Tenderlink, the Tenderlink system for our tenders. So please note that the tender documents must be obtained from Tenderlink. Okay, anything else from any other source, your tender will be ineligible. So please do bear that in mind. Clarifications, whilst the tender is live, will be via an online forum, and please note that there is a closing date, which is 5 working days. So one of the things I say at this point, I'm obviously been talking a lot at this point, but please do bear in mind that I'm very happy to take any queries or general questions, process, anything to do with the tender or the tender process up until the time that we go to market, and we can have a free and frank conversation. The moment the tender goes live, everything will have to run through the forum. So please do, if you are interested, take a look at this, take a look at the documents, absorb, feel free to ask questions. In terms of the responses, again, please do, all the returnable schedules must be completed, signed, and so on and so forth. Again, people make mistakes in this space, sometimes with the best of intentions, and please make sure that you upload prior to the closing date and time. Again, this is something that trips people up more often than not. Oftentimes, people are very, very busy. They've got a particular group of folk who do this sort of thing. But where it can sometimes fall over is not so much with that, it's that somebody does this job principally and they're sick or on leave, so it goes to a support person. And then the support person, and if you think about where we are at the moment in the state of the general health of the nation, they're sick and then something doesn't happen. So please, if you're going to go to the trouble of downloading the documents, make a decision to respond. Please don't fall over on the first hurdle and not get it on time. Thank you. In terms of our income model, this is a standard approach. So this is a rebate paid on the percentage of sales. And we ask you to report to us on a monthly basis if you're awarded. The amount will be confirmed. It will be in the tender documents, so you will know precisely what the rebate percentage will be before you make a decision on whether you wish to tender. But this is, as I understand it, so I've been told, this is a standard model for folks such as ourselves who offer this sort of a service. And again, just to reiterate again, we are a for-profit business. We're not supported in any way or funded in any way by anybody in any sort of government. And our members don't pay a membership fee. So in terms of how to work under the contract, just a few, again, general high-level process slides. I won't speak in a lot of detail to them, but just to say there are pre-committed members for most of our contracts. There may be for this one. And then there are members who opt in once a panel has actually been awarded. For this panel, I should say that there is a broad usage, and it's a repeat and stable usage amongst the membership. So you have people, some will pre-commit and others will walk up. So there's a genuine, solid, established need that this contract meets. In terms of engagement and invoicing, again, it's more pictures with arrows, which is something that I failed abysmally at because I'm a history student. So I understand sort of arrows on a map when it's the barbarians invading some other people, but I don't really get it when it's boxes and process. But anyway, for those of you who are more familiar with the structure, it says what it says. In terms of the tender hints, again, it's the usual sorts of things. Please, if there is a question, please do try and answer it. I should say that since I, as the tender manager, will have to read it, I'm very mindful of the questions that I ask. And as far as I can, I only ask what I need an answer to. Particularly for those of you who do this sort of thing for a living, I'm mindful again that you can have reams and reams of questions, which are boilerplate, as I call it. Again, we try to keep that to a minimum. But if we do ask the question, then please do endeavour to answer it. In terms of the usual sorts of things here, we're quite happy to see charts and numbers when suitable. Please don't use abbreviations, or rather, let me put it this way. If you're going to use abbreviations a fair bit, if you want to put the first one in full and then put a bracket and then use the abbreviation afterwards, then I know what you're talking about. Thank you. In terms of the what's next, as I say, the draft specifications will be available in the next day or so. If you would like to see a copy of them, then please do send me an email and I'll let you have them. Please do come back to me by the end of June if you've got any comments, again, on structure, shape, form, anything, except possibly color coding. There's not a lot I can do about that. The RFT will be available from the 24th of August at this point, and you can see that my contact details are there. If you've got any questions up until the tender let, then please do feel free to get in touch with me. I should say that I'm actually on leave in the month of July, but you've got a couple of weeks now until the end of the first week of July to be in touch, and then I'll be back in the second week of August. So please do feel free to give me a call in the intervening period. Anything you send to me in the time that I'm away, then I will certainly look up when I get back. Other than that, I'd like to say thanks very much. And are there any questions at this point?